Hello strongman people, Glenn Anderson here. So I'm just going to do a quick little video on strongman competitions. Maybe you've never done a strongman competition before, maybe you've been training strongman for a while when you're thinking of doing your first competition, or maybe you've done one and you want to do another one. Okay, so altogether I've done 5 competitions. I've done 3 novice and 2 intermediate, and I should be doing my first open competition in November. Okay, so there's basically 4 main categories. There's beginners, there's novice, intermediate and open. Okay, so like I say, for those of you that are fairly new at strongman, or you've been doing it for a while, when you're thinking of doing your first comp and you're probably wondering what category to go in. So for most strongman competitions, you're going to have an overhead event, a log, axle or dumbbell. There's going to be some form of deadlift. There's going to be some moving events, probably farmers, yoke, and you might have some medley, so sandbag carries, keg carries, etc. Maybe a duck walk. So let's talk about the log first, or the axle, because in most competitions it will normally be an overhead lift. That's normally the first thing you'll do. Now please remember that not all competitions are going to have all 4 categories. I've done some competitions before that only have novice and intermediate. I've also seen some competitions that are novice and opens only, there is no intermediate, but generally you have 4 categories. So let's start with the log, so or the axle, an overhead event or barbell. For beginner, the log will normally be about 70 or 80 kilos. Novice will normally be about 90 to 100. Intermediate will be anything from 105 to 120. I think I've even seen some intermediate comps have a 125 log for reps, but that's quite rare. Normally with a log for inters, you're normally looking at 105, 110, 115, maybe 120 at a push. I think anything more than that's quite heavy for an inters, but I have seen it. And then for open, it's normally going to be anything from 130 to 135, 140. Normally it's 140, but I have seen open competitions with a log or an axle as low as 130. There was a competition in Chelmsford recently that had the opens category had log 130 for reps. But that's about as low as I've seen it. But with an open, your overhead axle log is normally going to be around 140. So when you consider going for your first competition, you need to look at the numbers that you're capable of, what you're already doing, and what you think that you can peak to and do. Let's say, for example, you're new to strongman, you've been doing it for a while, and your best log is 65 kilos. And you've seen the competition, they've got a beginner in there and the log is 70. Well, obviously you're going to zero it, but if you know ahead in time and all that, maybe you can do like a log peak. There's plenty of good programs available online that you can look at, and maybe you can peak your log and maybe get yourself to a 70, maybe 75 logs. So on the day, remember you've got a minute to, normally it's 60 seconds, you'll have 60 to 75 seconds. So if you do manage to peak and get a 75 log or whatever, with the 70 on the day, you might get a couple of reps. So basically you've got to pick what your limits, what your capabilities are going to be. I remember when I did my first competition, it was 90, the log was 90. I was going to go in the beginner, but it was full, so I had to go in the next category up, which was novice, and the log was 90 kilos for reps, and got 5 reps. And I believe at the time, I think my max log was about 110. So I knew I definitely wasn't ready for the inters, because I believe the log was like 115 or something like that. But it's quite interesting actually, because sometimes just because you've done it in the gym doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to do it on the day. I remember when I did my first intermediate competition in 2018, it was a 115 kilo log for reps, and at the time in the gym my max log was 130, but I went down on the day, it was 115. I couldn't even get a single rep. I think it was a combination of nerves. The sun was out, it was held outdoors, the sun was in my eyes. I had a lot of sleep because I was so nervous, and on the day I just couldn't perform. So you've got to take all that into consideration as well. Just because you've done a certain weight, you know, if you're looking to let's say, for example, let's say your max log is 90 kilos and you're going to go in this beginner category and it's 80 kilos. Just because you've done 90 in the gym doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get 80 on the day, because there's all sorts of things to factor into. Okay, so moving on, deadlift. Beginners, it's normally going to be around 180. Novice, it's normally going to be about 200. It was 200 in the second novice comp I had. In fact, both of them, it was 200 actually, in both the novice comps I did. Intermediate deadlift, normally 240 for reps, and open will normally be anything from 280 to 300. In the open competition that I'm doing in November, it's 280 for reps and on an axle as well. Okay, so yoke, beginners, it will normally be about 180. No, sorry, 200. Yoke, normally about 200 beginners. Novice will normally be about 240, 250. Intermediate will normally be 300. And opens will be anything from 320, 330 onwards. It could be 350. I've even seen it as high as 380, maybe even 400. Farmers or frame, let's just say farmers. Beginner will normally be about 80 or 90 per hand. Novice will normally be about 100, 105. Intermediate will be anything from 110, 120, and opens will be anything from 135, 140 and upwards. And then of course you got your loading events. Now I don't want to go into this too much because it could be anything. You could be doing sandbags, kegs, duck walk, whatever. So I'll just tell you what I've done in the past and actually give you a good idea of what the weights are likely to be in a medley. Bear in mind, of course, that in a lot of competitions you could be doing anything. You could be doing arm over arm pulls, truck pulls, all that sort of thing. But if it's going to be a medley, when I did my first competition, it was 3 kegs. Each keg was 60. A beginner could be 50. If you're, I was like, in a novice, a sandbag will normally be 80 kilos. Intermediate will normally be about 100. When I did my last intermediate competition, the sandbag was 100 and the keg was 120 and the duck walk was 150. So just to give you an idea. In this competition I've got in November, which is an open competition, it's sandbag over a yoke. So you lift 3 sandbags over a yoke, which will be 100, 120, 140. So for an opens, for kegs and sandbags, you're looking at about 140, possibly 150 even. So very, very heavy stuff. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that breaks it down a little bit as to what you can expect and what kind of weights you could be dealing with in each category. Okay, so thank you guys for listening. I hope you found the video helpful. Please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. And yeah, I'll catch you next time, guys.